Chapter 30. Alone, I refused to look down as the wind swung me in the air. Hyperventilation hadn't helped my racing pulse. I squeezed my eyes tightly as I prayed. If I was to fall to my death, then it was cruel to hold on to hope. We were on the top floor of my new condo complex. If somehow I lived through this, I'd never step foot in a high-rise again. You think you can get away with stealing my man? My heart hammered in my chest. Jennifer. I swayed, which turned me around in the air. I kept my eyes closed, but I called out, "Help!" Why should I help? Jennifer's voice stopped mid-sentence while my heart thrashed in my ears. Then Jennifer called out, "Alice, is this a joke? What are you doing here?" My throat was so dry, I kept my eyes closed as my head swam. Please get me down. How did you get out the window? This was a cruel torture. Out of all people to save me, I had not expected Jennifer. I was going to fall to my death any minute. My body convulsed. Please, just help me. Hold on, let me figure it out. My limbs tingled. This was my only hope. I swallowed. Hurry. The large industrial sound of a lever screeched in the air and my heart raced. As I swung, I opened my eyes and plastic hit me in the face. I grimaced, but then I saw the apartment floor below. My entire body felt weak. I would survive. I came to confront the girl sleeping with Peter, Jennifer said. Now was not a good time for conversation. My heart thrashed in my ears. I was kidnapped. My feet tiptoed on the floor. Jennifer had saved me. I'd never say another bad thing about her again. Then, without one plea, Jennifer reached above me and tried to untie the rubber. With a grunt, the actress opened her purse and found her keys. I have a pocket knife for the handcuffs. These are not police issued. Give me a second. Nothing made sense. The Spanish telenovelas were filmed in a nice area of town, so Jennifer wouldn't need a knife. Not that I was complaining. With a few strikes, my new best friend freed me. I collapsed to the ground as I tried to compose myself. Tears in my eyes welled as I gripped the floor. Thank you. The girl sleeping with Peter kidnapped you. I didn't see a girl. It was John's boss at the FBI. Jennifer reached out to help me stand. My legs were weak, but I found my balance as Jennifer said, "No wonder Rafe said the government database was giving him trouble." I rubbed my forehead. He told you that. Jennifer held onto my arm as I stumbled closer to the door and the elevator. We had to get out of here in case Smith or his mysterious benefactress returned. I was in his office demanding a name on that DNA. Adrenaline pumped in my veins. Is Officer Solis here? No, I drove here myself. Jennifer let me go so I could walk on my own 2 feet. A few steps later, I had my strength back. Jennifer, can you drive me to the Morgan mansion? I went to open the door, but Jennifer grabbed my hand. Escachar, the elevator just dinged in the hallway. My hands shook. We can't be here. There is no place to hide. I stared at my feet and then at Jennifer. My gaze returned to my new friend. Take off your heels. What? Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. We were out of time, and I pointed. Those can be used as weapons. We just have to get to the stairwell. You want me to run without high heels? I closed my eyes and prayed. Yes. As I opened my eyes, Jennifer handed me one shoe and kept the other, stiletto out. I could just slap him. Someone was outside the door. I tensed and whispered, "He's stronger than that." You've never seen me slap a man. Actually, I have. Hit and run to the stairs. This is the plan. The door handle opened. I gathered my energy that surged from the near-death adrenaline rush. Smith stepped into the room. I lifted my hands and then crashed the shoe spike on his head. The heel broke, but he went down. Run! You broke my shoe. I grabbed Jennifer's hand and held tight. Now! Hand in hand, we raced toward the stairwell. As the door closed behind us, I broke the glass on the fire alarm and pulled it. The loud screeching sound pierced through the air. Other people joined us on the steps as we raced downward. My heart hammered in my chest as we made our way outside. Chapter 31. Excessive energy coursed through me as I held my phone. My mind raced as I waited for my security team to pick up on my ring. As I peered out the window, my hands twitched. No one answered. I paced. There should be video footage of my front yard. As my hands shook, I made a fast plan. First, I call the police, then I call DC and report what happened to Smith's superiors. None of this helped me search for Alice, but I had clues. A racing heartbeat echoed in my chest as the phone rang again, but this time I swung open the door and jogged to the car where Morgan's security should be. Nobody was there. Pick up, Rafe. The seconds ticked, and finally Officer Solis answered. Good morning, Mr. Morgan. What's going on? I rocked on my feet and peered inside the black van. Alice was kidnapped out of my house. Something metallic screeched in my ear as Rafe shouted, What? I tapped my finger against the van window. I let Special Agent Stephen Smith into my house to collect my badge. I went to get the badge, and when I came back, they were gone. I'm on my way. I swung open the van door. No one was inside. Security will have a video if I can find them. John, we'll find her. My neck stiffened. This wasn't good. Hurry! If no one was in the security truck, then either Smith went after my people or they were on patrol around the property. No need to panic. I dialed Washington. With my free arm curled around the back of my head, I paced before my front door and waited to be connected to someone. Then I spoke to Smith's boss and repeated the story. No matter what it took, I had to save Alice. My life wasn't as important. A few minutes later, the supervisor told me, "We're sending our men to help you now, Mr. Morgan." The FBI and the police were both good at solving crimes, but not for prevention. I swallowed back my thoughts as a police cruiser came into view. Rafe parked and walked from the cruiser, waving toward another patrolman who then sped away. I stared at my Mercedes. If I knew where to go, I'd be there already. I had to figure out where she was taken so I could get her back. As Rafe walked over and stood next to me, I couldn't hide my pain. "We have to find Alice." Rafe patted me on the back. I shook my head. Sympathy didn't help her, and that was all that mattered. Security chose that moment to turn the corner from the back of my house. I crossed my arms. These two were supposed to answer their phones if they walked away from the van. Not that it mattered. I called out to them, "Where is the video of Smith taking Alice?" Both men stood straight like they were new cadets in the Marines. One said, "We sent it in, sir." I walked in front of them like a drill sergeant. "You did what?" The boy shook in his boots as he repeated his training. "We saw the entire thing, sir, including the black sedan take off from your driveway. Ron caught everything on video, and all digital files save automatically at Morgan Security Headquarters. From there, they disseminate the information." The information rang in my head as truth. I backed up and stared at Rafe and then back to the men. "Give me the number immediately to whoever is on staff. Headquarters are still in the same place?" "On the estate, sir?" "At Peter's house?" Yes." Clarification always helped. I pointed Rafe to my driveway. "We'd take my Mercedes." I then told the security detail, "Call it into the police department too. We need to give Rafe the video. The license plate." "Yes, sir." Rafe held up one finger. "Did either of you write the plate down?" "Yes, sir." As I paced, I cleared my head. Hotheads cause trouble, and that was the last thing Alice needed. "Then get me everything you have." The security guard nodded. "Immediately." I shook my head. Rafe told me. "We'll find her. Hurting her is meant to hurt you. We should still have time." I puffed my chest out and accepted that fear had clouded my judgment. Now it was time to study the information and find her as fast as we were able. The case I worked has never been about someone I care for before. Let me handle the police work. I thought Rafe would have been a decent partner back in the FBI. That life was over now as long as I found Alice alive. A moment later, I had an APB out for the black Chrysler sedan with license plate X23NK9. Rafe turned back to me. "We're doing everything we can." With a curt nod, there was no more argument. "I want to go to my brother's house and watch the video." "Okay, but I'll have to take it once we're done there." The police needed the evidence to arrest Smith. Video was enough to convict usually, as it makes denial an impossible defense. The car ride to Castle Morgan went fast, and I barged in the front door without knocking. Victoria came rushing downstairs in high heels and a sundress. If my sister was alive, then miracles were possible. I needed another one. I walked straight past her and toward the main security hub. "John, what's going on?" "No time, Vicky." Her heels clanked on the marble floors as she chased me. "Is it Alice? I want to help." If I had time, I'd catch her up. Right now, every second mattered. "We're here for the video." Security stood up as we all rushed into the room. I walked right to the computer and hit the button to bring up the timestamp at my house. My sister tugged on my chair. "What video?" Rafe took her hand in his and told her, "Alice has been kidnapped." Vicky jumped back and her eyes widened. "What? I'm getting Peter. We're helping." With the click-clack of her heels, she threw open the door and charged down the hall. I found the car and watched how Smith threw Alice into his car like a rag doll. My fist clenched. I'd kill him the second I saw him. Vicky must have thrown open the master bedroom on the first floor because a woman screamed. Time froze. I gulped as recognition dawned. I had heard that scream before. I left Rafe with security and followed in Vicky's footsteps. A moment later, I planted my feet apart and pushed up my sleeves as I stared at the brunette. With a clenched jaw, I turned my gaze to Peter, who threw on a t-shirt. Frank Hudson's daughter? Peter tilted his head and stared hard at me and Vicky. The cluelessness in his expression told me he was innocent. Peter rolled his shirt down to cover his underwear. "Yes, John, she's Serena. We met her." I turned my attention back to the brunette as she stood with her arms crossed beneath her bra. Serena held her head high, challenging me. You were there when I arrested your father. Her jaw clenched and her words held her arrogance. I am surprised you noticed. Pressing my lips together, my gut told me this girl knew exactly what happened to Alice and how to get her back. Why are you here? Serena raised her eyebrows and didn't move. Excuse me, what? Vicky tugged on my arm as she stood next to me. She's clearly just had sex with Peter. Everyone would understand in a moment. With my shoulders back, I stepped into the room. Why Peter? Why Miami? Why now? You sent the threats. Serena tilted her head and laughed. I what? That was all I needed to know. She was guilty. Every cell in my body told me to ensure this girl never saw life without prison bars in front of her. If Alice is dead, then you have no idea the pain I will cause in your life. She threw her arms on her hips in righteous anger. You stormed into my house, arrested my father, destroyed my family because you hated your own. So, yes, I will destroy yours. Walking into the bedroom, Rafe knocked on the open door. I have an APB report. We found the car. Serena shook her head and stared at him with furious eyes. Your girlfriend will be dead by the time you get there. Rafe stepped in front of me and asked, Have you hurt her already? Serena stared past Rafe and her brown eyes held the fire of hatred. She narrowed her gaze like she could kill him with one look. Define hurt. A few more needles in this conversation would make her confess, just like her father and most criminals had once they'd been arrested. I don't have time for games. Where is Alice? Serena smiled like she had exciting news to share. She's gone. She's dead by now. Get over it. Vicky sobbed, and as I couldn't comfort her, she ran to Peter, who massaged her shoulders as she called out, Why would you hurt Alice? Serena scowled at Peter and Vicky like they'd done something that she hadn't planned. My muscles tightened in case I had to defend my family. Then Serena turned her full hatred back to me. John Morgan doesn't get to play God with our lives and then roam free. I took from him what he took from me, all sense of home and family. Peter hugged Vicky and said, You're wrong. Serena turned toward him and the air around her chilled me. Excuse me. Peter and Vicky held hands as they walked to me. Vicky reached out and took my hand as Peter said, John, Vicky and I might not be much of a family, but we're the Morgans. If Rafe doesn't arrest you, I'm sure I'll find justice for you. All this talk of family was a bit much. I let go of Vicky's hand. Vicky then commanded in a strong, determined voice, Peter, put some pants on and grab your keys. We have to help John find Alice. Rafe stepped forward and threw the handcuffs on Serena. Smith remained out there and he had Alice. Right now, that was all I needed to focus on. I'd save her. I had to. With fast, sure steps, I walked toward the door. If Serena bankrolled the crime, Smith was about to implement his exit strategy to get out. I had to outthink him. Fast! The footsteps behind me sounded like everyone intended to come along for the ride, but I couldn't wait. Nothing could slow me down. Then someone banged on the door. I reached for my gun as security shouted, They're clear! Smith had been clear too. Neither Rafe nor I moved, and Peter pushed Vicky behind him as security buzzed whoever was outside in. First, Jennifer walked in. Rafe lowered his gun, but my skin stayed hypersensitive and alert. A moment later, Alice pushed her way inside. Rafe dragged Serena outside as I locked my gun in place. My skin tingled and my thoughts didn't make any connections. Jennifer stopped, crossed her arms, and clicked her heel like she intended a huge fight. Who's this? Alice's blue eyes were moist and wet. I rushed past Jennifer, who stalked toward my brother. Then Alice threw her arms around my neck. If the heavens knew how to set a man's soul ablaze from one touch, then they blessed her with the skill. She hugged me and life surged back into my spine. With her face nuzzled in my chest, she asked, Is this over now? Her hair was like silk as I ran my rough fingers through it to cradle her head. Yes. Without letting go of my neck, she trembled. Can we go home? I want to talk to you alone. Smith was still out there. Officer Rafe Solis had his APB and location. I decided to trust the police and turned all my attention toward Alice. I massaged her back. Of course. She let go of my neck, but took my hand as she dragged me toward the door. It was clear she didn't want to be in the Morgan mansion. Alone, I could tell her that all was right with the world now that we were together again. Chapter 32. My heart hammered in my chest. I tugged John's arm. I couldn't wait to tell him. I turned to the huge house in the green trees that created the illusion of shade. It was fitting we were here. I turned him into the garden next to the driveway as I wasn't ready to drive to John's house. We walked toward the gazebo. The sun shined down and birds chirped in the air. I held onto his arm. I didn't want an audience to hear me. He rubbed my hand and nodded. It's fine. We'll go home soon. I closed my eyes. This was it. I took a deep breath and everything else around us faded away. As I opened my eyes, he had an ethereal glow around him. John, I'm so in love with you. Deep dimples appeared on his cheeks. My heart raced as he cleared his throat. Then he leaned his forehead on mine. Good, because I love you too. My stomach fluttered. You do? His hands clasped my waist and an electrical jolt rushed through me. Yes, and I've tried to tell you for weeks, but you won't listen. I laughed. What? He kissed my nose and then went down on one knee. My heart fluttered as I stared at him. I want to ask you a question. My hand covered my mouth. What? As he reached into his pocket, his face went white, then he bolted upright. Wait right here, don't move. A smile grew across my face. Okay, my love. His mouth brushed against mine. I tried to hold him close, but he'd stepped back. I laughed as he ran toward his car. A moment later, he slammed the car door shut and ran back toward me. Then he went down on one knee and held out a jewelry box. It's been in my jacket. That whole weak knee moment was real. My eyes watered. John opened the box and revealed a diamond larger than I'd ever seen. Will you marry me, Alice? I jumped up in the air, pulling him with me so I could wrap my arms around his shoulders. Yes, of course. With a huge grin, he slipped the ring on my finger and a sigh escaped my lips as I stared at my hand, resting and sparkling on his shoulder. John, we're doing this. Really? And he hugged me. Even if your mother disapproves? I would rather spend my life with you than have a life without you. Out of the blue, my phone rang. I reached into my back pocket to silence it, but I saw it was my mom. She's right on time. John held me in his arms as I answered. Sweetheart, stay safe. My mother's voice was so high that it took a second to understand. I stepped back and covered my mouth. My gaze stayed on John, though his eyes narrowed. I asked, What? Give me the phone. The man that tied me up and left me to die. Smith. I recognized his voice. I fumbled to get the phone on speaker. Now that John could hear, I screamed, Who was that? John motioned with his finger for me to stay quiet as he used his cell phone to text someone. I was so dizzy that I couldn't form a sentence. And then Smith caused both of us to freeze as he said, Alice, your mom is coming with me as insurance that I get to the airport. The front door of the main house opened and the police, Victoria, Peter, and Jennifer followed. Where is my dad? Smith's inhale reverberated in the air with a ring. You have a dad that lives here? Colt and Clara were also there, unless he went to the beach condo. I held my tongue, not wanting to give away my family to Smith. Officer Solis and the others stayed behind me, though it was obvious that they rushed around to do something. My stomach clenched and my vision blurred. I closed my eyes and rocked on my feet. At any moment my father might walk in, and then this would get so much worse. My dad had a heart issue. Oh, God. John texted Colt. I grabbed his arm to keep him next to me as I saw the name on my screen. With my hand shaking, I begged into the phone, Please leave my family alone. Smith sighed. I will tell your mom to get in the car. No, this was wrong. I rubbed my forehead and tried to loosen my tight shoulders. The police arrested Serena. Now is the time for you to run. Then gunshots echoed in the house, black spots danced before my eyes, and my pulse rushed. The phone turned off as Mom screamed. I trembled and the world became black, even as there was a swarm of activity around me. John's arm around my waist was the only warmth I felt as he picked me up and rushed me toward his car. I needed my mom, and in the end, the arguing never mattered. Chapter 33. Palm trees flashed by my car window and I focused on the yellow line of the road. My nerves were raw. I flinched as the yellow line disappeared and the paved road turned rocky. The farm. Strawberries scented the air and my muscles tensed. The police sirens behind us did nothing to help my tension. As John stopped the car in front of my old house, I fought off the image of my parents dead on the floor. They had to be fine. A moment later, my mother ran out of the front door and threw her arms around me. Alice! My mother hugged me hard. Mom. John placed his hand on my lower spine. Are you okay, Mrs. Collins? My mother pulled away, but she kept our hands locked together. Yes, no. Colt has that man tied up in the kitchen. I stayed near John so I could smell his woodsy scent. How is Dad? My mother brushed my hair out of my face. He's grateful you weren't here. I took Clara to our neighbors until this is over. I folded my fingers over my mother's. Good idea. Can we go in? My mother lifted her hand and let the diamond shine in the sunshine. What is this you're wearing? I took my hand away from my mother. Mom, John and I are getting married. My mother's face went white. The man wanted to kill us because of John. Now you're marrying him? I stood next to John and nodded. It's not a question, it's a fact, Mom. Tears formed on my mother's face, but then she reached out and hugged John too. John seemed baffled as he reached one hand around to hug her. Ellie pulled away, but then raised her hand and finger. Fine. John, if you hurt my daughter. John lowered his head. I won't. My mother continued with her finger in the air. Then keep her safe. I pressed my lips together. I'd not scold him more. Mom. Ellie stepped to the side and pointed to the door. Fine. Let's go inside. She then pushed her way between us and took both our arms and looped herself with us. John, where is your family? John held the door for us. Vicky wanted to stay at home in case we needed logistics. Peter is coming now. I tilted my head and tried to see John. Without Jennifer? He nodded. Yeah. Did you want her? I'd find a way to thank Jennifer later, but right now I had everyone I needed. No. More cars parked on the dirt lot by the farmhouse, and John let my mother's arm go. He waited and held the door open for his brother and Officer Solis. A moment later, Peter came through the door with papers in his hands. Solis walked over to Smith. John rubbed my arm, but then followed Solis. His years of FBI training instilled the law in him. Peter went to my parents and handed them a few sheets of paper. Curious as to what made my dad smile, I joined them and heard, "This contract is fair." A noise escaped my throat. Contract? Peter nodded, though he stared at John, who spoke with Colt and Special Agent Smith chained to a chair. We've done business together for a decade, and now that you're marrying my brother, I figured we should ensure both of our sides stay happy. I rubbed my neck. But you said... Peter nodded and turned toward me, away from my parents. I thought you hurt my brother at the funeral. Don't hold that against me. My mother walked away in a huff. I stood next to my father and shook my head. I'm still confused. John's hand on my back sent a warm spark through me. He studied the papers. What's happening? None of this mattered. Now that I was to marry John, my life was perfect. I crossed my fingers and hoped he agreed. Peter just renewed the contract for the farm. My father folded the papers. This looks excellent, but we'll have to talk it over with Colt. John's eyes held a sparkle, though I saw both surprise and confusion. I used my thumbs to massage my wrist as he said, That's amazing. Everything worked out. My stomach hardened for a moment as I reached for John's arm. John, you offered? With those dimples back on his cheeks, he gave me a smile. I still need your help with the rest of my life and where I should spend my money. You're not getting off the hook. A huge sigh escaped my mouth. Everyone else blurred in the background as I threw my arms around John. Deal. He hugged me and kept me close. I love you. As I stepped out of his embrace, I took my dad's hand. My mother came back toward us as I had John shake my father's hand. Welcome to our family, Mr. Morgan. I hope you grow to like family. Peter added, There is always a job at Morgan Enterprises for my brother. John nodded his acknowledgement and shook my father's hand. Alice gets her eye color from you. My father placed his hand on my mother's back and kept her close. Yes, she does. John turned toward me and squeezed my hand. Thanks to you, I see what the point of a family is. With time, my mother would accept John. The rest of the world would sort itself out. Chapter 34. A few weeks later, I stared at the stick in the bathroom one more time, my heart hammering against my ribs. Adrenaline pumped through my veins as images of a future with John, a real family, flashed through my mind. I fanned my face, trying to catch my breath before turning on the bedroom light and jumping onto the bed. John stirred, his eyes still heavy with sleep. What time is it? He mumbled. Outside, the first golden rays of the morning sun were just beginning to peek through the curtains. It was barely past 5 a.m. He reached out his arm, wrapping around my waist to pull me back down into the warmth of the covers, clearly not ready to face the day, but this couldn't wait. A giggle escaped my lips as I shook his shoulder. John, wake up. There is something I have to tell you. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and took my trembling hand in his. What is it? Is everything okay? A lightness grew in my chest, expanding until I thought I might burst. I broke into a massive grin. I'm pregnant. John froze, his hand still resting on his head, his mouth dropping open in pure shock. What? I launched myself at him, my arms wrapping tightly around his neck. I said I'm pregnant, I whispered, my voice thick with a mix of fear and sheer exhilaration. He pulled me close, his strong arms encircling me protectively, holding me as if I were the most precious thing in the world. I can't believe it, he murmured against my ear, his breath warm and steady. He pulled back to beam at me, his eyes shining with a new kind of light. I'm going to take care of you, both of you. Just relax, okay? But relaxation was the last thing on my mind. My heart was pounding with joy and a sudden mischievous spark. I leaned in, my lips brushing against his jaw. "I have another idea," I whispered. He let out a slow, lazy yawn that turned into a smile as his lips met mine. The kiss was deep and demanding, full of the promise of our future together. "You're crazy," he growled playfully against my mouth. "No, I'm just happy," I countered. I moved closer, my heart racing as I looked into those dark, hungry eyes. "You know, I read something online," I teased, my voice trailing off into a suggestive whisper. "It said we should stay very connected, and now that I'm pregnant, it's supposed to be good for the baby." John threw his head back and laughed, a deep, throaty sound that echoed through the quiet room. He pulled me closer, his gaze softening with an intensity that made the rest of the world melt away. "Is that so?" He didn't need to say another word. As he leaned in to claim my lips again, the rest of the world faded. The morning sun climbed higher outside, but inside time stood still. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of our shared joy and the promise of the life we were building, everything was perfect. It wasn't just a happy ending. It was the beginning of our forever. Happily ever after. Author's note. Thank you so much for following Alice and John's journey. If you enjoyed their story, you won't want to miss the next book in the series, Secret Baby. Follow Victoria as she discovers the truth about the child she thought she lost, and watch as Colt Collins, the man her father forbade her from loving, steps up to protect their daughter. Get your copy of Secret Baby now. Explore my new series starting with Cherished. Stay updated. Sign up for my newsletter at victoriapinder.com for new releases and exclusive content.